Hello, my love. Welcome to the Lounge of the Single Women's Society. I'm holding the door open. Come on in and take a seat. I have a very special guest who is joining us in the lounge today. But before I do her intro, if you're brand new to the show, welcome to the Single Women's Society. I am your host and founder, Kat Cantrell, and just by being here, you're automatically a member, so welcome. Let me just give you a little bit of the lowdown. Our goal here at the Single Women's Society is to first celebrate you and your beautiful singleness. Second, to help you build that confidence when it comes to finding love, to help you build that confidence when it comes to dating and dating relationships, to help you understand what you are deserving of, both in your life and in your love life. So thank you for being here. And again, huge welcome. I'm so honored to have you here today. All right, ladies. My guest, my guest and I were connected, and instantly we had a connection. We are so like-minded. Her message and her vision is very, very similar to what we do here at the Single Women's Society. And her story needs to be shouted from the rooftops. Not only of who she is and what she does, but also her journey, her story, because it's such an inspiration and it can give you all so much hope. So I would suggest I really want you to focus on this guest and on this interview today, because there is a lot of really good, valuable tidbits and advice that she gives to you. So I want you to any point in time throughout this interview, stop and pause it and take notes, because she has such incredible advice and words of encouragement to provide to all of you. So let me introduce you to her. So her name is Laura Benke, and Laura is a women's empowerment coach, speaker, writer, and host of her own podcast, which is called the Life Actually Podcast. She was a reporter, a sports reporter and anchor for 16 years, and went through her own journey of realizing that she wasn't living her truth, that she was portraying a part of herself, that she was trying to be perfect. She was trying to fit into the mold that everyone wanted her to. And she stepped away and has built this incredible life for herself. Her podcast is so unique because she interviews women about happiness, about what it's like to be a successful woman in today's day. And women from different backgrounds, from different experiences, different ages. And it's such an honor. It is truly such an honor to have Laura here to share her story with all of you. So ladies, grab your drink and sit down and help me welcome Laura Benke to the Single Women's Society. Well, Laura, thank you so much for being on the Single Women's Society podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, Kat, I am so thrilled to be here. When you and I connected, I just knew it was meant to be. We align on so many things, and I'm really excited for this conversation.
I'm really excited to have this conversation as well. You and I were discussing prior to the recording of this episode, we were talking about how it's really difficult in the work that we do to find other women who are like-minded, who teach the same philosophies when it comes to finding love. And when we were talking to one another, we were trying to, so just so our listeners know, we're trying to map this out on how exactly we wanted to introduce each other to each other's audiences and the best way to do that. And Laura, your story, I just feel is so, not only with the work that you do, and what you do for women, but also just your own personal story is such an inspiration. And I think especially now women have a tendency, and I'm sure you find it the same, where they're losing hope when it comes to love. And I feel that your story is one of hope and it can give a lot of inspiration to a lot of our listeners. So I'm just so excited for this interview. So are you ready? Should we get started?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
And thank you for saying all of that. I appreciate it.
So let's go ahead. We'll just dive right in. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you and what do you do? So we'll just start with that.
All right. Well, excuse me. I do want to say when you talk about my story, giving hope, to kind of put some context into all of this, because we'll get into all of the details.
Yes.
10 years ago, for sure. Heck, even 7 years ago, 6 years ago, I never thought of my story as being one of hope because I was in such a place of struggle and of questioning why my life wasn't going the way I thought it was supposed to go, why it didn't look like what felt like everybody else's life. And so now that I can see hope in this, I can see that, the way that we get so focused on how things are is not the way they're going to be forever, and that is such an important thing, I think, to remember for all of us at all stages of our life. So I'm kind of in my second professional career life. My first professional career life, I was on TV. I was a sports anchor and reporter for 16 years. Worked all over the U.S. in various markets. My last market was New York City. I was there for 7 years before I got out of the business. And, I loved it. I loved sports at the time. Now I don't really care anymore, but I absolutely loved it. I loved the idea of being in a male-dominated world, having to make my way as a woman and really kind of pave the way in certain areas, even though some incredible women had done far more work before me that allowed me to be able to come into that space. But TV, it is so much about appearances. It is so much about image. It is so much about, and this was for me. Everybody is different in the way that they handle this. But for me, I had this idea of perfection and this persona that I needed to put out. Like I couldn't screw up in any way. I certainly couldn't screw up in my reporting. I was always so afraid of making a mistake, which happens. We're human.
Right.
We make mistakes sometimes. We say the wrong word. We say the wrong stat. As a woman in that industry, I always was so scared of making a mistake because I thought everyone would be like, oh, she's a woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Why is she even doing this? When I just made a mistake, So there was just so much pressure about how I was supposed to be living my life. And that was on camera. I then also took my off-camera life too and thought, well, that has to be perfect too. I have to have this image that I'm putting out there. I can't be single. I can't have never had a boyfriend. I can't. And those were all of my truths. I was 35 when I met my husband, and he was my first relationship. And that was probably my biggest secret and also my biggest fear, that people would find out that I had never had a relationship, because I had been told by society in so many ways that if you don't have a relationship into your 30s or heaven forbid beyond, well, then there must be something wrong with you. And so that was a message I had internalized for so many years, which it was exhausting trying to be this perfect TV version of myself. And when I did meet my husband, I was able to kind of let some of that guard down, or at least I was able to kind of start looking at things from a different perspective, because I was in a different place mentally. I was becoming more accepting of who I had been before I met him. And I started thinking, do I really want to be doing this? Do I really want to be talking to guys about stats that don't really matter to me? And the answer was no, it wasn't. I wanted to talk to women. I wanted to be able to talk to women about the things that I went through and the things that I struggled with, because I knew once I did finally start with a few friends or a few people that one in particular was a woman my husband worked with, and I started telling her my story, and she was, she's about 10 years younger than me, and she was single, and she was like, oh my gosh, your story gives me so much hope. And I was like, what? It does? Because it felt hopeless for so long. She's like, no, I need to hear this. People need to hear this. Just the story of what it's like to be single, and that it's not, that it's okay, that it's not this like phase that you have to get out of, that we have to only focus on getting out of. And so that is what got the ball rolling, which it's not like the ball just rolled down a hill and everything was totally steady from there. Like, I had no idea what I was doing when I left TV. I just knew I couldn't do TV anymore. And I got out and was like, whoa. I had no idea how much of my own personal identity I tied into being a sports reporter. This is interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Like, wait, I always thought I was better than that. Like, oh, no. That's just my job. Oh, no. It was my life. It was totally my life. And so it took me some time to kind of work through things. I thought, well, I love fashion. Maybe I should be a fashion influencer. Well, that didn't exactly interest me once I kept going at it. And then there were plenty of people who were doing it way better than I was. And I started on my fashion blog. I started to write a series about when I was single, and just sharing stories, just sharing some of the experiences I went through. Because I knew if I had struggled with it, if I had experienced it, that others had to be as well. And the very first post I had in that series was admitting for the first time publicly that I had never had a boyfriend until I met my husband at 35 and a half. And it's not like this was going viral. Like, there were not a ton of people reading this blog, but still, I put it out on the internet.
But for you, yes.
Yeah, it was huge. And so I hit publish and was like sweating and going, well, what now? People know. People are going to know. Are they going to think that I'm just like that there was something wrong with me? Because again, that's what I had always said to myself. And by the end of that day, and again, I didn't have a ton of people a lot of traffic on my blog. There weren't a ton of people who were reading this stuff, but by the end of the day, I had 3 separate women reach out to me. One I kind of knew, 2 I had never met, and all 3 were like, I have never had a boyfriend. One was in their early 30s, one was in their late 30s, one was in their, I think it was like around 35. And all of them said, I thought I was the only one. Mm-hmm. I thought I was the only one that had never had any type of a relationship. And they're like, thank you for writing this. It makes me feel like I'm not the only one.
Right.
And at that point, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I was onto something. Yes. I knew that meant so much, to be able to connect with women on a level that actually matters.
Yes.
So eventually things happened. I kind of, found my path, and now here I am. I'm a coach. I like to say I'm an expectation busting coach, because it's not just about being single. Those single women I work with a lot, and I have a very, very special place in my heart for the single experience and the single life. But also these ideas of, you're supposed to have kids at a certain age, or you're supposed to have kids at all, or you're supposed to have your career completely figured out. You can't make a career transition in your late 30s. I was 39 when I launched my company, and 40 when I started taking on coaching clients. So go back to 25-year-old Laura, who would have said, oh, you're way too late. Like that, you have to have everything figured out by that time. And so there's all these ideas that society keeps handing to us about what we are supposed to do and what track we are supposed to take in order to have a happy and successful life. So that is those expectations are so inappropriate for so many of us. They just don't apply.
Absolutely.
So that's what I do. I work with women as a coach, kind of helping them reframe their perspective. I'm not trying to help you find a husband or a life partner, because there are so many things about that are out of our control. But I do want to help you love who you are and what you're doing, and whatever happens in the future happens. And I do truly also believe that if you want to find a partner, if that loving relationship is on your heart, is what you desire, that it's going to happen. I just can't tell you when.
I know.
I just can't tell you when. So what do we do in the meantime? How do we reframe the way we look at the life that we are currently living? So I'm married now. We've been married for just over 3 years. I moved from New York City. We're in the suburbs in the Bay Area of California now. And we are expecting our first child, and I will be 40.
Yay!
I will be 42 when I give birth to my first child, which, you want to talk about things I did not expect, that would be one of them. But, here we are. Here we are. So that was my long-winded answer to that question.
Oh, it was perfect. It was not long-winded. It was absolutely perfect. I have goosebumps, Flora. Your work is so important. And I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine not too long ago, and part of, I think, of understanding what love is celebrating yourself. Mm. And I know that some women, they do become so wrapped up in societal expectations, especially now with social media. I mean, I'm 47, so we're around the same age. And in my 20s, I didn't have that. I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have Facebook. I had pressures of family, but I certainly didn't have the pressures that it seems like single women especially, have now, to have that Instagram life, to have everything, and to have the career and the relationship and the picket fence and the dog and everything else. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, it feels like she can't have the space that she needs to just celebrate her own greatness.
Yeah.
And just listening to your story, my story is a little bit different. I got married really young because that's what we did in my family. That was the pressure that I received. And so I got married really young and went through a really bad divorce with 2 small children. And even after my divorce, I was getting pressure. Like, you're getting older. Your children are getting older. When are you going to find someone? Now you have baggage. Now you have kids. You're going to have to find that special guy who's willing to take you in and your 2 children. It seems like we can't win, no matter what stage of life we're in, when it comes to trying to find a partner, that we can't.
That's so true.
Doesn't matter if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 40s, if you've never had a relationship or if you've been through a couple of divorces. It's just like there's a continuous stigma on us no matter what we do.
Yeah,
and it seems like men don't go through that as much as we do, from what I can see.
No, certainly not. Well, and what you just said too about going through a divorce. So you did find somebody, you did do what you were supposed to do and everything society said you were supposed to do. And then when that ended, you have people right away saying, oh, okay, well, now you need to find somebody else. It's like, oh my goodness, is that the only thing that we're supposed to be striving for, is a relationship? And it's just so unfair.
It is unfair. So let me ask you a little bit more about your own story. So what was your breaking point to leave your career? Because I think that is a lot of our listeners have careers that they're very serious about and that they're very passionate about. And I think that at some point in our lives, when we do have this awareness of being like, I feel like I'm being called to something bigger than me. Like, I feel like I'm being called to something greater than what I'm doing now. So if you don't mind me asking, what point did you reach where you're like, okay, I'm moving on from this. I'm not going to do this anymore. Because that takes a lot of courage, especially someone in your position who's having to, you're in front of a camera all the time. You're a public figure. So yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'd spent 16 years doing this, and it's a career. I mean, all careers, you work your way up, but TV is so hierarchical as it works. I started out in a teeny tiny town of like population 2,000 people and worked my way up to New York City and had sacrificed so much of my life in order to devote it to TV. And that was my life. And so you get to this point now where you're like, well, were these 16 years a waste? Like what was I doing? And, I got to the point, I unfortunately am not able to go into specific details about my actual exit from TV, but
oh yes, of course.
What did happen was I started to realize that my values and what mattered to me did not align with the experience that I was having in television.
Okay.
Really for women and the opportunities that women had and the way we were treated and the way we were viewed within that business. It wasn't fitting with what I saw for myself. And I had spent so many years in this business, but I was, it was a maturity thing. The older you get, the more you life experience you have, the more you understand. But it was also, I wanted this so badly. I wanted to be on TV. My goal was to make it to a network, which I never did. But that I wanted success. Like that to me was so important. And so I would do anything. I would do whatever the business was forcing me to do, which was, sometimes, well, certainly working nights and weekends, certainly giving up all of my personal life, but also not getting opportunities that I thought I totally deserved for political reasons that were beyond my control. I just accepted it. And I got to the point where I realized I cannot change the business. I cannot change the company I work for. I cannot change any of this. This is way too big. This is way too much. And I don't have that fight in me. I also don't have the capabilities. But if I can talk on an individual level with women, if I can help women individually feel better about who they are and what they bring to the table and what they offer, that's, looking at it at this micro level so that I can help women go out and maybe not put up with some of the things that I put up with, maybe realize their value a little bit more, both personally and professionally. And that to me was so much more appealing than anything else. And being able to have those individual connections and, am I going to hugely change the world? No. How many of us ever have that opportunity though,
Right.
And so I had to stop looking at it that way and looking at it more as, well, what is a realistic and something that makes me feel good in a way that I can help other women. And I realized it took me a long time to realize this, but I spent pretty much my entire TV career trying to pretend that I wasn't a woman. One of the biggest things that I hated was when people referred to me as a female sports reporter. I was like, no, I'm a sports reporter. Like, stop. Why do you have to have the female part in? All I wanted was to blend in because I had been taught, and everything I had observed, the only way I could succeed in such a male-dominated TV business was to act like all the men. And I got to this point that I was like, wait a minute. But I am a woman, and that's not a bad thing. That brings a whole unique set of skills and a perspective to this business that my male colleagues don't have. And so why am I fighting that? And so instead of trying to pretend I wasn't a woman to fit into this culture that I really didn't like, it was time to stop. It was time to stop doing that. It was, I was a female sports reporter, and I am damn proud of that. And none of us should have to feel like, in order for us to be successful in any way, whether it is personally or professionally, that we have to fit somebody else's mold.
Right.
You are you. again, both personally and professionally. Just
Right.
like you can't tell women there's one way to date to find your perfect person. Like you have to follow
Right.
this set of rules.
Yes.
No, absolutely not. You are an individual, and I so badly, because of the way that I did not champion women for so long or champion myself as a woman. It's so important to me now to be able to champion women in all walks of life and in all experiences, that we don't have to hide the fact that we're women to be
Right.
successful. We should be able to embrace that and bring that in to all the aspects of our life, because that's who we are. That's what we bring.
I I have so many things to say. I don't even know where to begin. I would have to say the way that you were talking about when you decided to leave your career, you can take just that philosophy and you mentioned this, take that philosophy of knowing your worth, of knowing that you deserve more, of knowing that this isn't a right fit for you anymore. I think that especially when it comes to when single women are dating and they settle on the plan Bs, or they'll just settle to be in relationships just to be in a relationship. It's like women settling careers just to have this career.
Yeah.
You understanding that you did deserve more and that this did serve you, and able to have that courage to leave. And I think that if women that's, I mean, you and I, our work is so similar that part of our work is showing women their worth and having them understand their value, and having them understand what they are deserving of in all facets of their lives. And I just, what strength. I admire you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Just what incredible, incredible work. And I've always had this saying where it's not, for me, it's the work that I do with women. If I can make an impact on her life and help her see herself the way that I see her, she changes her outlook on how she views herself. And then she's going to take that knowledge and she's going to share it with a woman in her life. Mm-hmm. So even though we feel like we're not making a gigantic impact, like I feel our impact, the impact that we make is like little baby steps. Like we work with one woman and then she learns and gets more awareness of who she is and what she wants. And then since this newfound knowledge, then she shares it with her sisters or her friends or her daughters, I think there's not enough of us to go around, Laura.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And, that just reminds me so much of, one of the big things that I struggled with when I was single and really trying to accept the life that I had was that, my parents, I grew up in a very loving household. My parents were married very happily until my father passed away recently. And they always taught me that I could do whatever I wanted. I have a younger brother, and the two of us were equals in their mind. You guys can do whatever you want. I wasn't, they weren't telling me you have to go get married, you have to have kids. It was whatever made me happy. And so that's what I did. I went out and I pursued this TV career, and I worked really hard for all of that. And then around 30, when I was like, oh my God, I have this great job. I'm living in New York City. Everything is wonderful, but I'm miserable because I feel like I'm a failure. And when I really started to think about it, I'm like, okay, my parents told me I could do all of this, but they met when they were 20. They got married at 23 and 24. My mom was 27 when she had me, which was late because they had some trouble conceiving. So the only visual that I had of how a woman's life was supposed to go was my mom's. And that did not match up with my own. So, just as women, just by talking to each other, just by sharing what we're actually going through and the way our lives actually go, we are allowing so much more of an understanding and a realization that there are so many different paths, and there isn't just that one that you maybe grew up with or that you saw on TV. And as a very good friend of mine was like, you know what? we have to peer mentor each other.
Yes, yes,
'Cause
absolutely.
so many of us we did not grow up having that perspective. And I hope now that it is becoming more common for women to focus on different things and have different timelines, that the next generation, I have a 4-year-old niece, I certainly hope that as she grows up, she will see what her aunt did. She'll also see what her mom did, which was a much more traditional route, but she'll be exposed to more things. But in the meantime, for us of our age, we have to help each other out. We have to share what we actually went through. And the more you start to hear about other people's stories and experiences, the more it helps to make you feel a little bit better about your own. So you're so right. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
You start helping a woman with her awareness of and changing her perspective, and she starts sharing what she's actually going through, and like, let's spread some authenticity in the world. And yeah, I like that idea of that ripple effect.
And I think we've come leaps and bounds, but I do feel that there's so much more work that needs to be done.
Ugh.
And
Yes.
one of the things that I have taught women is that women, even though I do believe that women seek out, not only do they seek out they need to seek out friendships with other women, but I feel that women need to give women permission to be themselves too, because we do, just like you mentioned, I think that every woman has a story of her mother. Like, we carry that around with us, and we're like, and because growing up, that was our role model. Like, we thought that's the example of what a woman is and what a mother is and how I'm supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be. And I feel that so many women, especially who haven't been in a relationship or haven't been married, and as they're heading towards some milestone age and they feel this pressure that's on themselves, that especially if you've had a mother that got married young or had children young, it's even though society's telling you that it's okay, I think it's getting better, right? Where it's like, you do you and you pursue your passions and your dreams and what it is that you want. But still there is that weight of just, our family's expectations of us, or that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing because our moms did it this way and now we're doing it this way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just look at everything we celebrate as a society. We celebrate engagements, weddings, baby announcements, babies being born, next babies being born, job promotions. We celebrate. These are the things we celebrate. We're not celebrating the single woman who lives by herself and just figured out how to fix her toilet when it broke, or the single woman who just bought her own damn house. Like, we're not celebrating those things. We have this set idea of what it is that means, oh, she's doing what she's supposed to do in life. Like, let's give her presents because she's doing what she's supposed to do. When, oh my goodness, I was just having a conversation with somebody on my podcast who was talking about, she's like, what about when you get out of a toxic relationship, when you decide, I deserve better than this, I need better than this, I want better than this, and you break up with somebody, and everybody looks at it like, oh, you broke up with somebody, oh, that's so terrible, oh gosh, well, don't worry, you'll meet somebody.
Like, oh yes,
I want to celebrate the fact that I chose to walk away from something that was doing me harm.
Right.
Like, why can't we celebrate things like that? There are so many. And so, so of course, even though we're trying to change the message, we're trying to change all of these ideas that are being put into our heads, there still is a very, very powerful force, because it's been perpetuated for generations. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. And so, it's just so easy. Even when we think, okay, I'm doing really well for myself, then you see somebody else's engagement announcement or somebody else's baby announcement. And it's like, okay, I'm being reminded of all the things that I'm supposed to have, but don't. When supposed to and should are all so subjective.
And it's, so I put together these little events here locally for the Single Women Society, and part of is to bring single women together to not only talk about love and talk about we will pick a topic every time, and we always end every meeting with a win. Like, tell me, excuse me, tell me all of the greatness that's going on in your life. Like, yes, I know that you're on the search for love, and
yes.
I got you, and we're here to talk about that, but let's also talk about you. Like, tell me what amazing things happened to you this month. What are your wins? This is your time to brag, because just like you said, like, we don't, especially for single women, when they go home, it's themselves, and it's, yeah, they can call their family, but they don't have anyone else to brag all of their greatness to. And so I think it is really important for single women to talk about all of their greatness that's going on in their lives, all of the celebration that they're having or the celebrations that they want to have for their, whatever it is, whether it be a promotion or just like you said, get out of a toxic relationship. I think when I got a divorce, I actually made myself a cake.
Nice.
Yes, and I brought it to work, where I was like, I'm celebrating that this is now over, and you all can celebrate with me. But nobody celebrates those very often. No. But I was going to. I was on a mission for that, because it was important. So do you tell me a little bit more? So I'm going to go back to your story just a little bit. So when you met your husband and you had never been in a relationship before, what I agree with you. One of the things that drives me crazy is when people say not being in a relationship is a red flag. So if you've never been in a relationship, it's a red flag. I don't know who, and I feel, so I just recorded an episode about online dating. And in my episode, I said what you said, where I'm like, this is my opinion, but this isn't the end all be all, meaning finding love. If something has worked for me, I'm going to share it with you, but it might not work for you. This might not work for you. Maybe something else is going to work for you. I'm not the type of coach that gets on there. It's like, you better do it my way or it's not going to work, because that's not how this is. And just like, if you've never, who to make such a blanket statement that just because you've never been in a relationship, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be great at a relationship. In fact, you could have all of that inside of you ready to give it to somebody, right?
Yeah.
So tell me more about when you met your husband. What was going on in your mind during that time, so that other women, just like we were saying before, that they don't feel alone, that they know that these thoughts are normal, and that, the fear and because one of the things that I work with women is they are confident in every area of their life, Laura.
Yes.
Other than dating and finding love. So what was going on in your mind at that time? And then what kind of advice would you give a woman who's in your position, as far as putting herself out there and being vulnerable and being willing to jump in?
Yeah. Well, I think, as you just mentioned, having women who are so successful in so many parts of their life, and then are just not feeling successful when it comes to dating. We can control so many aspects of so many parts of our lives, and we have almost no control over dating. We can control how we show up and our perspective and our attitude, but we can't make somebody fall in love with us. And so, if you want that promotion, if you want to buy a house, if you want to go on a trip of a lifetime, like, you can take all of these steps to have that happen. But when it comes to love, so much of it is out of our hands. And I didn't realize that. For so long, that's not how I looked at it. I looked at it as, well, you've had success, you've been able to figure everything out, why can't you figure this out? And I kept applying the logic that I was using to get a new job, to finding a boyfriend, and it's just not the same. So I had a string of experiences, because they weren't relationships, but you meet somebody. I always, if I was attracted to him, I was like, okay, well, this is the one. This has to be the one, because I don't know the next time I'm going to have a date. So this has to be the one. And so I was going into these first dates like, okay, I have to be everything he wants. This has to be perfect, because if it's not him, I'm only going to get older tomorrow when I wake up and the day after that. And like, oh my God, the stories that I told myself. And so I went out on not many dates, but a few dates with some really not so great men. But I told myself, no, 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 this is good. This is good. Like you don't really know how it's supposed to go. You know how you want it to go, but that might not be reality. So let's put up with this. And thank God these guys were terrible people and like ghosted me or walked away or whatever they did to break my heart at the time. But I got to the point where I was like, oh my goodness, I'm tired of this. I am so tired of feeling this way, of having dating making me feel bad about myself.
Yes.
And there was something that happened when I turned 35. It was a really hard birthday for me. 30, I was okay with 30. 35, I think I felt like 40 knocking on the door, and 40 terrified me. When I actually turned 40, I didn't care. But when I was 35 and single, without kids, without that life that I thought I would have, right. 40 felt like that was the age the door would close on any of those things. Like, these are the things I was telling myself because it's so not true. But 35 was rough. I went into a really dark place after 35 of just like, it's never going to happen. You're going to be alone for the rest of your life. Somehow you have done something to make it this way. And I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't know what to say to you. I mean, these were the internal dialogues that I was having. And I decided a few months after turning 35 that I was, in New York City. It was the middle of winter. I needed a vacation. And because I was single and because I worked in TV with a super weird schedule, I didn't have anybody to go with. So I was like, well, I'm going by myself. So I went to Mexico by myself to a resort. I had done it before a few years prior, but that entire trip I was like, I'm here alone. Poor me. I'm proud of myself that I'm doing this, but I'm alone and I'm only here because nobody wanted to go with me. And that, Laura, I just want to hug that, Laura.
Oh, I want to hug her too.
But this trip was different. This trip, I was excited about this trip, and I got down to Mexico, and I was just so happy to do whatever I wanted to do. I could go to the beach when I wanted to the pool when I wanted to. I was the type of person on that trip who I was up at like 6:30 or 7 every morning. I went and worked out, had my healthy breakfast, and then was the first person getting the best spot at the pool, and then ordering my pina colada as soon as the bar opened. So it was still, my husband and I have traveled together. We've had wonderful times. It is still one of my favorite trips because it meant so much to me, and it just, I allowed myself to get excited before it even happened. And what I really realized now, and what I started to realize when I came back from that trip, was that was kind of a metaphor for my life.
Yes.
I had this idea in my head that the only future was one that involved a husband and children. I didn't know what my career was going to do. I didn't know anything else. All I knew was that a future had to have those two elements to it. And so when I would fantasize about a future, as we all do, as we all think down the line, like, what could our life look like? It involved a mystery man, because I hadn't met him yet, and mystery children, but they were there. And when I really started thinking about it, like, okay, so that's the future you're allowing yourself to have in your head. You don't even have a boyfriend. So the reality that you control doesn't involve any of that. So the actual future that you have control over is blank. I was not giving myself any type of permission to envision a future that didn't involve that. So no wonder I was terrified.
Yes.
My future was a black hole. And so I had this moment. I went to go visit my younger brother, who had his first child at that point. He now has 3. He did everything before I did, which, being the older sister, was always a little
Right.
difficult, but I went out to visit him and his wife and their young baby at the time, and we had a wonderful visit. And one morning they were in San Francisco at the time, and one morning we were walking around the marina and grabbed coffee on just a gorgeous Saturday morning, and we were walking down the street, and this older woman, probably in her 80s, was walking towards us, and we passed her. I don't know who she is. We didn't even make eye contact. This woman is complete stranger. But she had the biggest smile on her face. And again, it was a gorgeous day. Just one of those days that you're like, oh, you can't help but be happy about life when it's this nice out. And she walked by us, and something in my head, like some little switch just flipped. And I was like, wait a minute, that could be me. Like, what? Okay, so what if I don't have kids? I have this nephew. I know I'm going to have more. They'll have more kids. What if I just become the best aunt ever? What if I actually move to San Francisco and get a house or an apartment in this gorgeous neighborhood? And what if I move to Paris? What if all of a sudden, the floodgates opened, and I allowed myself permission to create
Yes.
possibilities that
Yes.
I actually had control over. And that was a game changer. Because to me, that woman who walked by us, who was in her 80s, I'm like, oh, she's single. She's single, but look how happy she is. Like that was a good story that I got to tell myself. Again, I have no idea what her story was. But I was like, that could be me. I could just be spending a leisurely Saturday morning enjoying my own company on a gorgeous day, knowing my nieces and nephews are close by, and I can go play Auntie Laura whenever I want to and be a part of their lives. And it was such a freeing feeling. And I decided at that point, because I'd been on Match.com, I had not had success, and I was tired of it. It was causing me stress. It was really causing me stress because you online date and you think, well, okay, I should be going on X number of dates a week if I'm really trying hard, or I should be making this type of a connection, or all of that. And it was just stressing me out. And so I came home from San Francisco, and stuff just started changing in my head and my views of things. I did not wake up and everything was perfect. Like, believe me, things are still not perfect. Things will never be perfect.
Yes.
But I was like, the ball was rolling. And I was giving myself this permission to have possibilities in my future. And I had like a month left on my Match subscription. I was like, I'm just going to let this roll out. I don't care. I don't want to be on this app. I don't want to be doing this anymore. And one day I was sitting at Madison Square Garden. It was before a Rangers playoff game, a hockey game. And, for those who don't know anything about TV, it is a lot of hurry up and wait. You're either rushing to get something done, or you're sitting on your hands waiting and waiting and waiting. So in this case, we were waiting and waiting and waiting for the game to start. And I was bored, and I checked my email, and Match, I have no idea how it works now, but at that time, Match would send you your daily matches. And there was just an email that I had been deleting every day. I was like, I got time. So I opened up the email, and there's my husband. The person who is now my husband. And I had never seen him before, probably because I had some very rigid standards. I did not want anyone who had been married. I did not want anyone who had children. And I had reasonings for that. I wanted to go through those things for the first time with someone who was going through them for the first time. But I was also cutting myself off potentially to some opportunities. Well, he had divorced written on his profile, and I was like, I don't know. Also, I'm really kind of over this anyway. Then I realized he was British. I was like, well, but that accent, that's nice. So I don't know. Okay, maybe. So I ended up messaging him because I was on TV at the time. I was doing online dating without a picture, which
Oh,
is a
yes.
whole other story that we could get into.
Oh,
So I reached out to him, and a lot of time that was a really good weeding out process when you don't have a picture and you reach out to somebody in a very nice and respectful way and
oh
try and explain
yeah.
to them why you don't have a picture.
Right.
Their response is incredibly telling. So, a lot of people, a lot of guys were just total jerks about it. So I was like, thank you for saving me the time of thinking that you might be a nice person.
Right.
But I reached out to him and he responded right away. This was about a few days after I saw him for the first time. We went out. I ended up eventually asking him out because I got tired of waiting. And so, like 10 days after we started talking, we went out for the first time. And that was about 6 weeks after my trip to San Francisco. And again, I kind of like, I like that tidbit, but I also hate it a little bit because I don't want to make it seem like, well, once you do this, this, and this, just like I did, 6 weeks later, you will meet your husband or
right,
your
sure.
partner or whatever. That is
Right.
just the way things worked out for me. But I truly believe that when I walked into that bar for our first date and I sat down with him and we had our first conversation, that he is the first man I ever dated who met the real Laura. Because I was finally in a place where I was much more comfortable with the real Laura. And I entered that date not
Yes.
thinking, oh my God, this has to be the one because I don't know when I'm going to date somebody again. And this has to work. And instead I was like, well,
Right.
at the very least, I'll have a glass of wine and I'll listen to a British accent. Like, those are my expectations for this date. And whatever else happens. And we sat there for 6 hours that first date. It went really well, but it also, what I didn't leave the restaurant going, that's the man I'm going to marry. Not at all, because I had done that before. Oh my God, I'd done that after first dates.
Yes.
And it was never tied to the reality of the situation. It was me creating this story in my head because I wanted it so badly. And I almost broke it off with him before our third date, which had nothing to do with him. Absolutely nothing to do with him. He was wonderful. He was saying all the right things. He was giving me my space, letting me kind of decide how quickly I wanted things to move. And I just started thinking, I'm okay with being single. Like I'm really okay with this life that I have and the potential life that I have down the road. Do I really want to get involved with a guy who could totally break my heart and then maybe set me back? Because I'm finally where I wanted to be. Like, I don't know how precarious my situation is. Like, if he does break up with me, am I going to go all the way back to where I was? And I walked into that restaurant on that third date, and I saw him, and there was just this feeling inside of me that was like, no, I want to keep seeing him. And that was it. And we were pretty serious pretty quickly. But in terms of the never having had a relationship, I had been pretty burned by that in the past. I have always been a very forthcoming, honest person when it comes to people I'm face to face with. Not when I was on TV in terms of my personal life, but when I was with somebody face to face, I really liked to tell people who I was. And so I had a habit of, and I also was always so worried people were going to be concerned by the fact that I had never had a relationship. So I felt kind of like, well, I should disclose it immediately. Like, hi, I'm Laura, asterisk, never been in a relationship. Make sure you're okay with that going forward, which when I actually met my husband, I was like, you know what? It matters if he's okay with it, because if he's not, like, I'm out of here. This doesn't matter. But also, like, that's not who I am. That does not need to be in the definition of Laura.
Yes.
Like, I'm going to let you get to know me. And then if it comes up that I've never had a relationship, it comes up and we can talk about that. But that is not what I'm leading with. Because I had a situation about a year prior to meeting my husband where a guy had just completely like jumped on the fact that I had never had a relationship and just kind of got it into his head like, oh, well, I want to be the first. He didn't like me. He didn't like, oh, that was that was miserable.
I'm rolling my eyes, by the way, to our listeners.
It was so, yeah, this dude ghosted me after like trying to get me to say he was my boyfriend, which he never, we were not in a place for that to have been the truth. And then it was like gone, just gone. And so at that point I'm like, it's nobody's business. It is absolutely nobody's business that I have never had a boyfriend. And it's just, we don't need to talk about it. So I made it pretty clear with my husband when we first started dating. I was like, I don't want to talk about your past relationships. I don't want to talk about my past relationships. I want us to get to know each other. These things may come up at times. It's not that we can never talk about them, but we're not, I refuse to sit here and rehash both of our past love lives. And you know what? That was right for me. That's not right for everybody.
Right.
He was more than okay with that because he had come out of a relationship he would have preferred to forget. And we just let our relationship progress in how we were getting to know the person in front of us. And he's the first person who, before the first date ended, had set the second date. And so, his intentions of like not disappearing were very clear from the very beginning, which I had never really experienced before. And we met in May. We essentially moved in together by the end of the summer, but like officially moved in together when both of our leases were up at the end of that year. And we ended up getting married 3 years after we met. So it was a longer period than I think both of us thought, but there were other circumstances in play that we had to deal with. But yeah, that's how we met. That's what my mindset was. It really became I don't have anything that I have to prove to somebody else. And I just want to find somebody who I connect with.
There's some similarities between our stories with my partner. So I've been with my partner for 7 years, and I also got to a point where I was loving my single life, where I had, and it was a little bit different because I had children. So I had that energy and I had 2 children that I had to take care of, but I never felt that I got to a point where I feel like I didn't need the male role model in my children's lives. Like I feel like I didn't have this void that I had to fill. I felt like I was finally living my life the way that I wanted to live it. And I was doing what I wanted to be doing. And I was loving the life that I was living. And it's almost the exact same where I got online because I was just like, I don't know. I even joined the free website. I was like, whatever.
Why not?
And I went in with the same viewpoint of being like, I'm not going into this date thinking this is the end all be all and this person's going to be the one. I went in to be in the moment, to be like, I'm just going to have a connection today. Like, that's how I viewed it, where I was just like, I'm just going to make a connection. I'm going to meet someone really cool. I'm not going to have this agenda or this weird checklist in my head. I'm just going to walk in and I'm just going to enjoy the company. And then whatever happens, happens. And it was the same thing where I think it was 4 hours. I think something we sat there and talked for a really long time. And I left with the same thing where I knew I wanted to talk to him again. But again, there is some release of pressure that we don't realize that pressure, yes, we feel it from family and society, but really that pressure comes from us that we've put on ourselves. And then once we realize that, why am I putting this pressure on me? Why am I not walking on the pier and enjoying my cup of coffee? Yeah. Why am I not having these experiences, enjoying being in the moment? That is a place of power. That is, like, for me, it's taking the power back, being like, this is my life and this is what I deserve. And I deserve to have these experiences and to be able to just celebrate being single and love being single.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with loving being single. Nothing wrong with loving being
No,
single.
there's not. And there's nothing saying that you either can love being single or you can want to find a partner. I think that's something
Right.
that people struggle with too. Like you could have both.
Yes.
Just because you love your single life doesn't mean you're committing to being single for the rest of it. It's not an either or.
Such a good point. I completely agree with you. And I have to mention too, when my clients come to me, and I always say, okay, where do you see yourself 6 months from now or 12 months from now? And I say, without a family or boyfriend or husband, like, let's talk about you. Because I don't think women are given that permission either, where they're like, wait, I just get to figure out my own goals, like what I want to be doing with my life without incorporating someone else into it. And so everything that you're saying, Laura, is see, I'm so glad we connected, because there's a lot of similarities here.
So am I.
I think too, it's important to know that. And I think just like what you said, everybody's story is different. You don't have to get to this certain point to be able to have someone. You don't have to. Yeah. One of the messages that I love that you say is that you don't have to love yourself fully to be able to.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Yes, you must love yourself fully before anyone can love you. No, you are capable of being loved every damn moment.
Yes. And I think that's when women understand that, because I've had clients come to me too being like, what if I don't feel like I love all of me? And I'm like, no, it doesn't. You have to love yourself enough to know what you are deserving of and what you want in your life. And even so, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to allow people in our lives that don't deserve. Yep. And then that's when we take a step back going, and that's why you should celebrate those when you leave those toxic relationships, because you're like, okay, I'm taking a step the right direction where I'm loving myself. I get to figure out, what I am deserving of and what it is that I want. So tell me so now I'm going to ask you your work that you do with women. And tell me, do you find a common theme with the single women that are coming to you? Like, what are their number one concerns? What are they searching for? What do you find what is common among all of your clients when they're with the work that you're doing with them now?
Well, I think one of the things that sticks out that I initially would have said, well, this is surprising. And then I think about it, I'm like, no, it's not surprising at all. One of the most common themes that I hear, because we have this belief that this is our fault, that we're doing something wrong. And so such a common feeling is I'm not attracted to people who are attracted to me. I'm not attracted to nice people. Like I'm only attracted to ones that don't work out, or maybe I'm just not, I'm not doing something right, because sure, there's this nice person here, but I'm not attracted to him. And it's just not, so you get this idea in your head that I'm doing something wrong. And I think because I had that feeling for sure when I was single. But I think it has surprised me how many women have said that and are looking to that as a reason that they're still single. Well, maybe it's just something wrong with me that I'm not attracted to this person. And it's like, okay, how many people in this world are we capable of forming a lasting, meaningful relationship that works for us, that is unique to us and is perfect for us? How hard is it to find friends? We're not friends with everybody that we meet.
Right.
And that's a friend. That's not the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with potentially. So how many people out there actually fit that mold? Not that many. Not that many. And when we do meet the people that we aren't attracted to, or that it's not going to work out with, they're just not the person. You just haven't met your person yet. And so trying to help women let go of this idea that they're the ones doing something wrong that is causing this. And it's just, Oh my goodness, it's just not true. And it makes so much sense that we all feel this way because those are the mainstream messages that are being sent to single women. The
Yes.
resources, like when I was single, and they're still out there way too much, but most of the resources, aside from work that you and I are doing, and the few women who are also doing this type of work, but it is how to find a husband in 6 weeks. What I remember I would read all these articles like, what are the best bars to meet men? What are you doing wrong on the first date that's making sure there's no second date? Or, how to dress the way men like all of these things, all these rules that are being put on us, which all tell us the underlying current of all of those things is you are doing it wrong.
Right.
Let us tell you how to do it right.
Right.
We're not doing it wrong. There's no wrong way to date. There's no right way to date. There's your personal wrong way and
Right.
your own personal way that's better. But
Yes,
that is by
exactly.
no means universal. And
Right.
it feels like just such a common thing that I hear in the women that I work with is just this belief that they have developed that it's their fault. And they have to fix it.
Right. And it usually involves fixing themselves or trying to fix themselves in ways
Yeah.
that, and when I started doing my work, so I started doing this work back in 2014, and I noticed that more and more women were calling themselves broken. Like, I'm broken, as if something needs to be fixed about them. And I think it's really important to kind of switch that dot. I try to, every time a woman tells me that she's broken, I have her reframe it because it's not true. It's not, we've all had, yes, there's a sequence of events and things that have happened to us that has led us up to this particular point. But I think you bring up I think your message is an important one that needs to be heard, which is every woman is different. We're all unique. And just because if I go into a date and because I'm this way, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I think the more we tell women that there's nothing wrong with her, the more we tell her just to embrace more of herself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
the connection's going to be there because she's comfortable with who she is. She's comfortable in her own skin to a certain degree. I mean, there's some things we're always going to be
Always working
uncomfortable.
on it.
We're always going to
Yep.
see that one thing in the mirror where we're like, oh, forget it. I'm not even going to bother
Yep.
today. It's always a work in progress. It doesn't matter. And I think just giving her, again, to release that pressure and just let her know that the best thing she can do is to show up and be herself, whatever that is.
Whatever that is. Yep, whatever that is. And I'm so tired of these messages of, let me help you fix it. Let me help you. Let me tell you what to do, which the most powerful message that sends is because, right, if it's not working for you, then you're doing it wrong. And that's just, nope. Mm-mm. No, it just hasn't happened yet.
It just and
hasn't happened.
There's so many factors that come into play. There's a person that's sitting on the other side of the table. Who knows what they're showing up?
Yeah.
And women have, the women that I've worked with, they immediately, if the date doesn't go well or there's not a connection that's made, it's immediately her fault. Like, I should have done this. I should have said this, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. And I always have to take them and take a step back and go, but is this your person? Like, okay, so you didn't make the connection for a reason. You're not there to please them, to make sure that you can woo and wine and dine them so they like you. But let's ask you, do you like them? And usually the answer is no. Usually they're like, well, not really. Well, then it doesn't matter. Does not matter.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And, these ideas of the rules and how you're supposed to follow them to snag the one. If the rules don't speak to you and that's not how you would show up in real life, then who is that person falling for if they are actually falling for you? Like that if that's not who you are. Like, who you are is absolutely perfect and wonderful. And whatever
Yes.
perfect means, it's as close as we get to perfect. It is who you are. There is nothing about it that needs to be hidden or changed, because if he doesn't like it, why
Right.
do you want to be with that person? Like the person your person is going to love all these things about you. And you will be able to, you can spend the rest of your life with this person because they're actually spending it with the real you. Oh my gosh. I mean, the definition of settling is basically letting all that go and just going for what is in front of you and letting them do the same thing, thinking that maybe you are what you aren't. That's not just settling on a relationship in a moment. That is settling for the rest of your life, potentially. And yeah, the best advice that I can give women, which sounds, it's not sexy, but it is, don't be yourself. Don't hide the things that you don't think they're going to like, because the right one, it's not going to be a deal breaker.
Right. I totally agree with you. I'm sure maybe you've seen this, but women will even go to as far as like enrolling or being involved in activities that they normally wouldn't have, just to
to meet somebody.
And then they start a relationship with them, and then they get angry that this person is always involved in these other activities. And I'm always like, but what, how was it when you first met? Like, things normally don't change. Like, what you see is what you get. And if you're changing your who you are or what you're involved with in order just to catch somebody, then what?
Then what?
Yes.
Then what? If you think, oh, I want a guy who's like, there's lots of guys who like to camp and who like to be super outdoorsy, so I'm going to do that. Okay, I can't camp for the rest of my life. I can't even camp for a night. But if I snag a guy and that's his life, like, oh my God, I'm going to be miserable. Absolutely miserable.
I can't even believe we've been talking for over an hour. So
I know.
Okay, so we'll let me ask you one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a woman who is 35, never been married, never been in a relationship, and I feel that love is not for me, or I'll never find love, what are your words to her? How would you help her get out of the rut that she's in?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing and the first thing is to say, it's really hard. It's really hard to be in a place where you didn't think you were going to be, to want something so badly that you don't have. That is hard. It's really hard. It's not something that you just need to get over or just start thinking positive, because this is real. The feelings that you have are real. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have to give ourselves the space to acknowledge what we are going through.
Oh, that's
and that
really
it's
good.
Not just about, just change your attitude. How many people told me that? Oh, I wanted to punch all of them. But this is tough stuff. And sometimes we have to grieve a life that we thought we were going to have. It doesn't mean that you're going to be alone for the rest of your life. But if you thought you were going to be married by 35, if you thought you were going to have the kids at that point, sometimes we have to be able to give ourselves space to grieve that that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way. And that's okay. It's okay to be upset about that. It's okay to feel bad about that. And once we are able to give ourselves that type of permission to say, yeah, this is hard. This is really hard. My other friends don't understand this. They didn't have to go through it this way. I feel really alone. And that is okay. That is normal. And you're not alone. You are not alone. And so I wish there was some perfect magic advice that could just make everything better. But to understand that there is nothing wrong with you. This is your timeline. This is your path. It is unique. It is not going to look like anybody else's. Just like even your friends who seem to be doing all the milestones, their lives still don't look like everybody else's. And that you and your life deserve to be celebrated right now and deserve to be enjoyed and lived, and not, you are not in a temporary phase before becoming a couple. This is your life that you have created. And some days it's going to feel really good, and some days it's going to be tough. That's just how it goes. But I truly believe that if you want to find somebody, if you are looking for that person, that you will find them. It will happen. Again, we just don't know when.
Right.
And I would give you a hug.
Yes. Laura, you are such an incredible woman.
Aww.
I am so honored that you have decided to spend time with me today. I cannot thank you enough for being a part of the show, and I'm just so excited you're in my life. So I think that this is the beginning of something beautiful. So
Yes.
Thank you again for being a part of the show, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Kat. It's been wonderful.
See? Was I right or was I right? Isn't she incredible? So you want to go follow her on all of the things, ladies, all of the things. So on Instagram, and I'll make sure and put all of this in the show notes. So all you have to do is do one click. So she's on Instagram at Laura B. Benke, and I'll spell that out for you. It's BEHNKE. You can also go to her website, which is laurabenke.com, and you can also follow her podcast, which is the Life Actually podcast, and it's on all the streaming services. So please make sure and go like and follow and be a part of her world. Here's the thing when it comes to women supporting and encouraging other women. There is not enough of this around. And Laura and I, there's so many similarities between how we coach and the women that we attract that come into our worlds, that we can help and assist and guide them on the journey of finding true love, which sometimes may be yourself. I just don't think there's enough of this. So thank you, Laura, from the bottom of my heart for allowing me an opportunity into your life, for sharing your story with all of us. I'm sure that there's a lot of women who listen to this who can really resonate with your message. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right, my loves. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. And as always, if you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and click the bell so every time we upload a new episode, you are the first to know. And if you are listening on iTunes or Spotify, will you subscribe? That would be awesome. And then, of course, if you're listening on iTunes, please make sure to rate and review. That's how other women can find us here at the Single Women's Society. Also, if you are on Facebook or Instagram, come and follow us at Single Women's Society, or come follow me at Kat Cantrell. All right, my love. Laura's story is one that needs to be heard, shouted from the rooftops. It's never too late to find love. It's never too late. So I really hope that her message inspired you, and just know that you're not alone. Okay, that's all I got for you today, my love. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, true love is waiting for you, and I will see you all next time.